The main goal of this video is to introduce you to the concept and the function of variables. I will briefly talk about different types of variables, although the next several videos in this section are dedicated to each variable type. I will also explain the use of the semicolon, and I will explain the concept of the Matlab buffer, how to view the Matlab buffer, see which variables are inside the buffer, and how to delete or clear variables from the Matlab workspace buffer. In a previous video, I introduced you to the concept that Matlab is like a really fancy calculator. So if you just want to do really simple calculations, then typing numbers like this is fine. But let's say you want to use one of these numbers, this second number, over and over again many times. It would be pretty convenient if we could store that number. So let's call it x. So I'm going to write x equals our number 5. Notice that Matlab prints out the value of x to confirm what we've just written here. So this letter x now stands for the number 5. So this is called a variable. And now we can actually use this variable x in an equation the same way that we would use a regular number. So I can say x plus 5 equals 10, or x plus 2 equals 7. So this is the core idea of a variable. It's a letter or a set of letters that refers to some specific information, like a number, in this case the number 5, or there are variables for matrices or strings or mixed types of information. And the idea is that using the variable is much more convenient than having to type in lots and lots of information over and over again every time you use Matlab. Okay, now I'm going to create another variable. Let's call it variable a. I will set a to be equal to, how about 4? And now I can do arithmetic with x and a without using any numbers at all, just these variables that refer to those numbers. So I can say x star a, and the asterisk is for multiplication. So the x is for 5, or the x refers to 5, a refers to 4. So x times a is the same thing as 5 times 4, which is 20. And of course we could mix numbers in here. So I could say 10 times x minus, I don't know, 3 point, let's do some weird number, times, how about divided by a? So this is a great example of using computers to calculate some information rather than having to worry about doing all this in your head. Now, once you set a variable, it doesn't have to keep that same value forever. You can reassign a variable to a different value. This is called overwriting. So I'm going to overwrite variable x. I'm just going to set it again. I'm going to set it to be, how about 7.7. So now x used to be 5, but now x is equal to 7.7. So if I say x plus a, we now get 11.7 because a is still 4. I haven't changed the value of a, but I have reassigned variable x to be 7.7. Now notice that each time I run a command, Matlab is repeating the command and the results back to me. So I say x plus a and I get the answer 11.7. So I'm always getting the answer, including when I assign this variable. So I say x equals 7, Matlab says x equals 7. So this repeating of the information can be useful sometimes, but it can also get tedious and it can really slow down your code because it actually takes a long time for the computer to print out all of this information relative to the time that it takes to compute the math. Therefore, you can add a semicolon at the end of the line and your Matlab code will suppress the output. So now I write x plus a and then a semicolon, and notice nothing happens. I can assign x to be, how about 14, and I add a semicolon and nothing happens. I just get a new line. Well, I shouldn't say nothing happens. Something definitely happened. I reset the variable x to be 14. I can type x on its own and get a result of 14. But concluding each line of code with a semicolon like this is a good idea to make sure your code is running fast and prevent it from outputting the result of every single line of code. Now I'm going to create a new variable, and let's call this variable s. I'm going to set this to be a string. A string is a collection of characters like a word, and I'm going to use single quotes to indicate that this is a string. So I say s equals word. And now, let's say I change my mind. I don't want variable s to be a string. I want it to be a vector instead. So no problem. You can not only redefine variables on the fly, like I showed you with variable x up here, you can also change the type of the variable. So here, this is a character array or a string. And now I can just change this to be a vector by writing a vector. A vector is just a list of numbers. In this case, I've redefined s from a character array, or a string, to a vector of 3 numbers, 4, 5, 6. Now, I'm going to have a lot more to say about these different kinds of variables in later videos. For now, I just want to show you the flexibility of creating and working with variables in Matlab. Now, if we could only set variables to be single letters like x or a or s, then Matlab would be pretty limited because we would only be allowed to have 26 variables for an English language Matlab. Instead, you can use longer variable names. So let's create a new variable. I'll set it to be called Mike. So I'll say Mike equals 10 with a semicolon. And then I'll create another variable. Let's call it Tom equals 20. And now we can do arithmetic. For example, I can say Mike plus Tom equals 30. It's important to use good variable names that are brief but not too short and also meaningful. In fact, variable naming is so important that I have an entire video just about the rules and recommendations for naming your variables. So that's going to come a little bit later in the course. Okay, so we've created several variables so far. Do you remember all of the variables that we created? Maybe you do, but it was only a few of them. So we can type whos to see a list of all the variables that we've created. So whos, W-H-O-S. This gives you an alphabetical list of all of the variables that we've created, something about their sizes, the bytes, so how much memory they take up, the class, and any particular attributes. Now, you don't need to worry about all of this additional information for now. These are features that you will learn about later on in the course. For now, you can just worry about remembering that you can type whos, this keyword whos, and that gives you a list of all the variables that you've created. Now, all of these variables exist inside what's called the Matlab buffer. It's only possible to work with variables when they are in the Matlab buffer. So for example, if I were to say x plus a, no problem, I get an answer of 18. If I were to say x plus a plus q, then Matlab gives an error message. It says unrecognized function or variable q. Now, I have not created a variable called q. Maybe I'm going to create one in the future, but I haven't yet. There is no variable called q in the Matlab buffer, so it is not possible to work with a variable that's called q. Now, of course, we could change this. I could say q equals 30, and then I can say x plus a plus q, and we get the answer of 48. By the way, in the previous section, I showed you about all the different widgets that you can have, the different little windows in Matlab. I prefer a clean Matlab window, but just to show you this information here that I typed from getting whos, we can also see by clicking on the home bar and then layout and clicking here on workspace. So now here we have the command window here that I've been working with so far. And here you see a list of all of the variables and some key information about those variables. Now, as I mentioned before, many people like to have these workspace and other little widgets open. So if you like that, if you find that convenient, then definitely go for it. Next, I want to tell you about deleting variables out of the workspace. You do that by typing clear. So I'm going to type clear and then the name of the variable that I want to remove. So here I created a variable q. I set q to be equal to 30. You can see q is also in the workspace here. And I'm going to type clear q and then enter. And now q is already gone from this list here. And if I type whos, then I no longer see q here in this list either. And now if I go back to this expression where I say x plus a plus q, we get, again, this error message, unrecognized function or variable q, and that's because q no longer exists in the buffer in the workspace because I cleared it out of there. If you want to clear all of the variables from the workspace, you just type clear on its own, like this. And now I type whos, and I get nothing. There's no more information in the workspace. And you can also see this widget here is empty. Now you have to be really, really super duper careful when typing the word clear, because this is permanent. There's no way to undo cleared variables. We're done. We can't get all these variables back. Well, we could, we'd have to go through and recreate all of them individually. X equals, whatever I set all these things to. Now I can type whos again, and we see that I only have X. All the other variables were cleared from the workspace. One final thing to keep in mind, which I will also discuss in a later video about naming variables, is that variables are case sensitive in Matlab. So here I specified lowercase x to be equal to 30. If I were to type uppercase x here, Matlab is going to say unrecognized function or variable uppercase x. Now what's interesting is that Matlab is trying to guess what mistake I made. So Matlab says, did you mean lowercase x? And maybe I did. But it is important to realize that uppercase and lowercase are viewed as totally separate things by Matlab, totally separate characters. In this video, I introduced you to the concept of variables and why they are useful. I showed you how to create and use variables and how to clear variables from the Matlab workspace. I talked about the semicolon to suppress the output of a line of code, and I showed you how to view the variables in the Matlab buffer or the Matlab workspace. In the next several videos, I'm going to start telling you more detail about the different types of variables, and we begin in the next video with numeric variables. I will see you soon.